Hare Krishna. Yeah, I'm just sharing. So we completed the preface part, and we just started the first chapter, anti-material worlds, and Prabhupada has, it's a section from Times of India is quoted regarding how two scientists they have proposed that there is something called antimatter, particle. So then Prabhupada is, uh, you know, he's mentioning from the Vedic point of view about those statements. Okay, anyone would volunteer to read?
Mataji, may I read?
Yes, Mataji.
The anti-material and material worlds may clash at a certain
Hare
period
Krishna.
and may annihilate one
Hare
another.
Krishna. Okay, you need to read from this part. In this statement, the following propositions.
Okay, Mataji, I'll start from there. In this statement, the following propositions are put forward. There is an antimaterial atom or particle which is made up of the anti-qualities of material atoms. There is another world besides this material world of which we have only limited experience. The antimaterial and material worlds may clash at a certain period and may annihilate one another. Out of these three items, we, the students of theistic science, can fully agree with items 1 and 2, but we can agree with item 3 only within the limited scientific definition of antimatter. The difficulty lies in the fact that the scientist's conception of antimatter extends only to another variety of material energy, whereas the real antimatter must be entirely antimaterial. Matter, as it is constituted, is to be free from all material symptoms, must also be free from annihilation by its very nature. If matter is destructible or separable, antimatter must be indestructible and inseparable. We shall try to discuss these propositions from the angle of authentic scriptural vision.
Hare Krishna.
The most Hare Krishna.
Yeah, we'll discuss this. Thank you so much, Mataji. So, from this news release that is quoted here, what Prabhupada is mentioning in this statement, the following propositions that were put forward by them were: there is an antimaterial atom or particle which is made up of anti-qualities of material atoms. So something different from matter or the material atoms, protons and all. And next to us, there is another world besides this material world of which we have only limited experience. And third is the anti-material and material worlds may clash at a certain period and may annihilate one another. So Prabhupada is going to give us a vision from the scriptural point of view, or from Shastra Chakshu, what we say. Out of these three items, we, the students of theistic science, we can fully agree with items 1 and 2. What is 1 and 2? First one is there is some antimaterial particle which is completely opposite to the qualities of material atoms and so on. And the second was there is another world beyond or something different from this antimaterial this material world. But the third one, that the anti-material material worlds may clash at a certain period and annihilate one another. So the difficulty lies in the fact, so this is not completely agreeable. Why? Because the difficulty lies in the fact that the scientist conception of antimatter extends only to another variety of material energy, So though they could conclude there is something anti-material world, I mean anti-material particle and so on, but still they couldn't come to the point of accepting the existence of the soul or the spiritual world or the authority of the scriptures. So extends only to another variety of material energy, whereas the real antimatter must be entirely antimaterial. Just like, as we know, the spiritual world is what indestructible. I mean, there is no annihilation, or there is now the flaw in the third point was the antimaterial material worlds may clash and annihilate one another, but actually the spiritual world is never, it never goes through annihilation. Material world, yes, it goes through annihilation as per its cycle of when it has to be manifested and unmanifested and all that. But spiritual world, it is there is no annihilation in the for the spiritual world. It's all ever existing. So that part is we get to know from the scriptures. Matter is, as it is constituted, is subjected to annihilation, but antimatter, if it is to be free from all material symptoms, must also be free from annihilation by its very nature. If matter is destructible or separable, antimatter must be indestructible and inseparable. We shall try to discuss these propositions from the angle of authentic scriptural vision. So Prabhupada is further mentioning. Okay, anybody else would volunteer to read?
Hare Krishna Mataji, may I read?
Yes, Mataji.
Here from the Bhagavad Gita.
The most widely recognized scripture from that paragraph.
I lost the para, Mataji.
You're able to see my screen?
Yes, I'm looking.
Yeah, from the very beginning.
Okay, the Bhagavad Gita is accepted.
Okay, you are able to see from there. Okay, what are you able to see right now?
Yes, now it is visible, Mataji.
Okay.
The most widely recognized, I think.
Yeah, from there you can continue.
Okay. The most widely recognized scriptures in the world are the Vedas. The Vedas have been divided into four parts: Sama, Yajur, Rigveda, and Atharva. The subject matter of the Vedas is very difficult for a man of ordinary understanding. For elucidation, the four Vedas are explained in the historical epic called the Mahabharata and in 18 Puranas. The Ramayana is also a historical epic which contains all the necessary information from the Vedas. So the four Vedas, the original Ramayana by Valmiki, the Mahabharata and the Puranas are classified as Vedic literatures. The Upanishads are part of the four Vedas and the Vedanta Sutra represent the cream of the Vedas. To summarize all these Vedic literatures, a little down, Mataji. Page should be down.
Is it?
Yes, now. The Bhagavad Gita is accepted as the essence of all Upanishads and the preliminary explanation of the Vedanta Sutras. One may then conclude that from the Bhagavad Gita alone one can have the essence of the Vedas, for it is spoken by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who descends upon this material world from the anti-material world in order to give complete information of the superior form.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so
Hare
much,
Krishna.
Mataji. So, the most widely recognized scriptures in the world are the Vedas, the Vedic scriptures. If you see, there was slide in one of the presentations I was seeing. The whole slide had all the different sections in the Vedic scriptures, like there are four Vedas and there are different sections to it. Hmm. So, and it was very complicated. It seemed to be very complicated. So actually, it's vast. Vedas, when we say it's vast, the Vedas have been divided now broadly. It is classified into four, that is Samaveda, Yajurveda, Rig Veda, and Atharva Veda. The subject matter of the Vedas is very difficult for a man of ordinary understanding. However, at least by coming to Bhakti, we understand that the essence of all these Vedic scriptures is Bhagavad Gita. So, because practically in this Kali Yuga, at least in this Kali Yuga, it's not feasible for one to go through all the Vedic scriptures and then come to the conclusion of the Vedas. One may be very learned in the Vedic scriptures somehow, but if one doesn't come to the conclusion of the Vedas, then it's of no use. So, by mercy of Prabhupada, we have come directly to the conclusion of Vedas, that's Bhagavad Gita. For elucidation, the four Vedas are explained in the historical epic called the Mahabharata in 18 Puranas. So there are 18 Puranas like Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc., which contains all the necessary information from the Vedas. So the four Vedas, the original Ramayana by Valmiki, the Mahabharata, Puranas, they are all classified as Vedic literatures. The Upanishads are parts of the four Vedas, and the Vedanta Sutras represent the cream. So we can understand overall that Prabhupada is giving, okay, this is how giving a glimpse of what is meant by Vedic scriptures, what is meant by Vedas. There are broadly four Vedas, then there are 18 Puranas, then there are Upanishads. I think there are 108 Upanishads or something. So, like that. And then Upanishads are parts of the four Vedas, and the Vedanta Sutras represent the cream of the Vedas. To summarize all these Vedic literatures, the Bhagavad Gita is accepted as the essence of all Upanishads and the preliminary explanation of the Vedanta Sutras. So Bhagavad Gita is the essence. So we may not presently in the Kali Yuga at least, we are all busy with a job, family, work, this work, that work, but it is made so easy by the mercy of Prabhupada that okay, he has given the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually the conclusion of all these Vedic scriptures. One may then conclude that from the Bhagavad Gita alone, one can have the essence of the Vedas, for it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why it's called as Gitopanishad, who descends upon this material world from the anti-material world. So, from the um, like the scientific point of view, if you say, the scientists are referring to the spiritual world as the anti-material world because they have no knowledge of the spiritual world. So Prabhupada is also mentioning that thing that Krishna has descended from that anti-material world in order to give complete information of the superior form of energy. So if you see the Bhagavad Gita also, he mentions about a little glimpse of how it is in the spiritual world. In one of the verses in 15th chapter, he mentioned there is no need of the sun or the moon or things like that in the spiritual world. It's self-illuminated. And then many places he mentions, but of course in the Bhagavatam we get to know details, much details about it. So, okay. Yeah, I think we can cover one more paragraph. Yes. Anyone else would volunteer to read? No one? Neelam, I think this is Shivangi Mataji. I am not very sure. Is that you? Okay. I'm trying to keep this class at 8 o'clock so that everyone can participate. So please try to participate, because it is not one is not in college this time, and one is not in at office work at this time. I can understand there can be household activities, so that I also have. So please try to participate. Anyways, so this paragraph I'll cover it. The superior form of energy of the personality of God is described in the Bhagavad Gita is para prakriti. So para is para. There are, if you see other, Prabhupada mentions in his books many places, uh, the the like the energy of the Lord can be classified into, somewhere it is mentioned 3, somewhere 2. So broadly, if we say internal, external energy, and the marginal energy. So para shakti, para is the spiritual, apara is the material energy. So superior form of energy is the para prakriti, that is the spiritual energy. The scientists have recently discovered that there are two forms of perishable matter, but the Bhagavad Gita describes most perfectly the concept of matter and antimatter in terms of two forms of energy. So the difference in the so-called, what is the so-called proposition of the scientist and what is actually the fact in mentioned in the scriptures is, the scientists have recently discovered that there are two forms of perishable matter. So though they propose, okay, there is something called antimatter, but they couldn't conclude that this is something imperishable, eternal, indestructible. But actually, from the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, we get to know that this antimatter or antimaterial world is completely different from the matter, and it is eternal. Okay, but the Bhagavad Gita describes most perfectly the concept of matter and antimatter in terms of two forms of energy. Matter is an energy which creates the material world, and the same energy in its superior form also creates the antimaterial transcendental world. The living entities belong to the category of superior energy. So we are all spiritual beings, so we are coming under the spiritual energy. But because we have a tendency to fall down into the material world, or the material energy, under the material energy, so we are classified into a different section, that is the marginal energy. The inferior energy or material energy is called apara prakriti. In the Bhagavad Gita, the creative energy is thus presented in two forms, namely apara and para prakriti. So this is, as we see Bhagavad Gita as it is. So we are seeing Prabhupada is presenting the things as it is, because the scientists, what they proposed, it was some kind of a guess, there is something apart from this matter, but not very clear vision. But Prabhupada has quoted from scriptures and is presenting to us what is that antimaterial world or antimatter. Okay, I'll stop here. If anybody has any queries, then please feel free to ask, or yes, you can of course share at least one point.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
I'm audible, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, you are audible.
I just want to share my experience of bhakti about my daughter. That Mataji, she can't speak, she don't understand much, but she knows that I have to offer my plate, whatever Mama is giving for food to Krishna, and then I have to eat. I'm very surprised that a child is not understanding much about the world, but she is understanding that we have to offer our food before eating to the Lord. So this
add on my excitement in bhakti, that if a child can understand this, then we should also do the service to Lord every time, as Guru Mata Gurudev say. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji, for sharing that. Yes, she must be seeing you offering the food to the Lord first. So she's learning that. So that's a very nice thing. It is said that there's a story. Some mother will be telling the child that don't eat ice cream, and she herself will be eating. So the child will obviously ask for, oh, you are eating, I also want. But if the mother is already following, okay, I will not be eating, you also don't. So like that, then the child will. Practically, we don't need to tell the children they have to do, what not to do. When whatever the elders in the family will be doing, they will automatically learn that. So it's very nice that she's seeing you, and therefore she's learning that and is imbibing those Krishna conscious understanding even at such a young age. So it shows that you are very nicely doing your bhakti, so she's learning that. Thank you for sharing, that was very
Yes, Mataji, thank
inspiring.
you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I had a question. So Prabhupada has mentioned that, Bhagavad Gita is one can have the essence of all the Vedas through Bhagavad Gita. So is it right to understand that if someone reads Bhagavad Gita with all dedication and understanding, so it's enough? We need not read all the Vedas and Upanishads separately?
Yes, you are correct that if we just understand Bhagavad Gita, then we do not need to, I mean, actually, practically, it is not possible. Also, we should understand that the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, as we just saw, they are vast. So now they are divided into three sections. One is those in the mode of goodness. There's a section of scriptures for them. Those in the mode of passion, there's a set of scriptures for them. And those in the mode of ignorance, there's a certain principles they need to follow. For example, those who are very much addicted to meat eating, for them it is recommended, okay, on the Amavasya or something, full moon or whatever it is. So on on that night, one has to offer that to Bali to Goddess Kali, and then they have to chant some prayers and so on. So now somebody who is so much addicted to meat eating cannot take up the process of bhakti and accept some superior authority, the supreme personality of Godhead, and detached from all material things. They just cannot take up. So for them, there is some, as per their level, there is some recommendation. So by following some regulations from the scriptures, they will get purified. Of course, it may take many lifetimes, but they'll get purified, and gradually they'll go to a higher state, little higher, like that. So we don't want to get entangled in one point in Bhagavad Gita. There's a verse, Krishna mentions, asks Arjuna to when you what is something flowery words. He mentions flowery words of the scriptures or the Vedas. So one has to come out that flowery words of the Vedas and come to the actual conclusion, based on the consciousness of different living entities or the humans. Different regulations or different sections of the scriptures are there, but one has to come to the conclusion of that, and that is these transcendental scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, and higher is Bhagavatam, and higher is Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Bhagavad Gita is like a preliminary study, and then there is graduation, then there is PhD, is Chaitanya Charitamrita. So yes, just by studying Bhagavad Gita, understanding and applying what is mentioned, what Krishna is asking us to do, we can be perfect in the understanding of Vedic scriptures. We need not go through the four Vedas, so many Upanishads, and so on.
Thank you so much for explaining, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your question, Mataji. Anything else, Mataji? If you are not able to speak, you can type it in the chat box also. Okay, I think there's nothing more to discuss. Then we'll close for today, and we'll continue from next paragraph tomorrow. Tomorrow, okay, yeah, Thursday, tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining, Matajis. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Matajis. Danvat Pranam.